Welcome to Objections Overruled. In this episode, number 4, we're tackling a big one, the idea that modern science has eliminated God.
You've probably heard this before, right? That science and faith are locked in some kind of eternal battle. You know the story. As science advances, belief in God has to retreat. But what if that whole story leaves out the most important part?
Let's just flip that common assumption completely on its head. What if the very opposite is true?
Here's the core of my argument, and I believe the evidence for it is just overwhelming. Modern science didn't come about in spite of Christianity, it grew directly out of it. Think about it for a second. The quest to understand why our universe is so orderly, so predictable. That's what lit the fuse for the scientific revolution, right in the heart of Christian Europe.
This is such a key piece of the puzzle. The people who built the very foundations of modern science, they weren't trying to disprove God, not even close. They were often devout theologians and thinkers who saw science as a profound way to understand the mind of the Creator.
I mean, just look at this timeline. These aren't just random names from a history book. They are the literal architects of the scientific revolution. Grosseteste gives us the scientific method itself. The Bacons refine it. Copernicus and Kepler totally turn our view of the heavens upside down. And Galileo, well, he famously defended his work. And what's the common thread? They were all driven by their faith.
This quote from Galileo perfectly captures the mindset of these pioneers. For him, studying the universe wasn't some act of rebellion against faith. No, it was like reading a second book written by God himself. For them, the study of nature was actually a form of worship. Just let that sink in for a moment. We are talking about Michael Faraday, one of the greatest experimental physicists in history. The guy's work led to the electric motor. And even at the end of his life, his ultimate confidence wasn't in scientific speculation about what comes next, but in his personal faith. So, the question is why? Why did modern science flourish in this specific intellectual environment and not somewhere else? It was not an accident. The Christian worldview provided the fertile soil, a kind of greenhouse for science to grow in. I just love this metaphor of a greenhouse from the book, The Soul of Science. It perfectly captures how a specific set of ideas that were unique to the Christian worldview, nurtured the fragile little seedling of scientific inquiry until it could grow and flourish. Now, these 7 core beliefs, which are the focus of my book, were the essential nutrients in that greenhouse soil. Just think about it. The belief that the world is real, that it's good, and that it's orderly, because it was created by a rational God who gave us minds capable of understanding it. That's the philosophical foundation you need. Without the conviction that you're looking for consistent universal laws of nature, why would you even bother to look in the first place? So here's the crucial takeaway. Science wasn't born from skepticism towards God, but from a deep desire to worship him. When the psalmist David wrote, "The heavens declare the glory of God," these early scientists took that literally. They picked up their telescopes and set out to study that glory up close. This history really reveals a common confusion we seem to have today about what science is actually designed to do. We keep asking it to answer questions it was never, ever meant to tackle. You see, science is absolutely brilliant at explaining the how of the universe, how gravity works, how cells divide. It's the master of physical causes. But it's completely silent on the why questions. Why is there a universe at all? What is our purpose in it? Those are questions of meaning and ultimate cause, and they belong to the realms of theology and philosophy.
And as Michel Gerton points out, a society that ignores those why questions risks turning us into robots. It strips away a reflective, meaning-seeking nature, the very spark that makes us human. Science can explain the biomechanics of how my legs move, but it can never explain why I choose to walk across the street to help a neighbor.
So if the real conflict isn't between the method of science and the content of faith, where does all the tension really come from? It's not about test tubes versus prayer. It's about our starting assumptions, our worldviews, about reality itself. And this is why I argue that the real conflict isn't science versus theology at all. It's between 2 fundamentally different worldviews: theism, the belief in a creator God, and atheism, the belief that there is no God. Science is just a tool. A theist and an atheist can use the exact same scientific method, look at the very same data, but their foundational beliefs about where that data ultimately came from will lead them to draw very, very different conclusions. And please, don't think this connection is just ancient history. Get this.
Between 1901 and 2000, a staggering 65% of Nobel Prize winners in chemistry identified as Christians. I mean, that statistic powerfully shatters the modern myth of conflict. For many of the world's most brilliant scientific minds, a robust faith hasn't been a barrier to groundbreaking discovery. For many, it has been the very engine driving it. You know, I believe Sir Francis Bacon, one of the fathers of modern science, summarized it perfectly. He saw no conflict, just two avenues for discovery. This was Bacon's brilliant insight. He called creation and the Bible God's two books, and since they both have the same author, they can't ultimately contradict each other. If we see a conflict, he argued, it must be because we're misinterpreting one book, or maybe the other, or maybe even both. The goal isn't to pick one over the other, but to learn to read both of them better.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this question to really ponder. Can science, a tool designed to explain the how, ever truly explain everything? Or does that universal human search for meaning, for purpose, and for an ultimate why point to a reality that lies beyond what our scientific tools alone can ever measure?